Chapter 141. Matthew and Amber made their way to George Whitaker's office in the heart of Newport. The town's charm was on full display. Cobblestone streets lined with gas lamps, horse-drawn carriages sharing the road with the occasional sleek automobile, and shopkeepers greeting passers-by with friendly smiles. Stay tuned with Novel Bin. Com Whitaker's office was situated in a stately brick building that housed several other businesses. The sign above the door read Whitaker Co. Real Estate, and the polished brass fixtures on the entrance hinted at the professionalism within. Matthew held the door open for Amber as they stepped inside. The interior was a mix of practicality and refinement. Dark wood furniture, shelves lined with books and ledgers, and a large map of Newport adorned the walls. George Whitaker greeted them with a warm smile, standing from behind his polished mahogany desk. "Mr. and Mrs. Hesh, good morning," Whitaker said, extending his hand. "I trust you found your accommodations comfortable?" "Very much so," Matthew replied, shaking his hand. "Thank you for your assistance in arranging everything." Whitaker gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. "Please have a seat. I've prepared the necessary documents for the purchase of the Hillcrest estate. It's a fine property, and I have no doubt you'll be very happy there." Amber settled into her chair, her posture poised but relaxed. "It truly is a wonderful home, Mr. Whitaker. Thank you for helping us find it." "My pleasure, Mrs. Hesh," Whitaker replied. "Now, let's go over the details." He opened a leather-bound portfolio, revealing a stack of papers. A detailed sketch of the Hillcrest estate sat on top, complete with measurements of the property, an outline of the house's layout, and a list of included features. "The Hillcrest estate spans roughly 5 acres, Whitaker began. "It includes the main house, a carriage house, and a modest gardener's cottage. The property also boasts mature gardens, a greenhouse, and a private access road leading to the estate." Amber leaned forward, her eyes scanning the documents. "The view alone is worth it," she said, glancing at Matthew. "I can already imagine us hosting gatherings in the garden." Matthew smiled. "It has everything we could want and more." Whitaker nodded, clearly pleased. "The asking price for the estate is $15,000, which is reflective of its size, location, and unique features, given its condition. There are no immediate repairs or renovations required, though I recommend having the roof inspected annually." Matthew nodded, taking note. "And the payment process? I'd like to ensure everything is handled promptly." Whitaker gestured to the papers. "The process is straightforward. You'll need to sign the purchase agreement, which includes the terms of the sale. A deposit of $10,000 is required to secure the property, with the remaining balance due upon transfer of ownership. The funds can be handled through a bank draft or direct payment." Amber glanced at Matthew. "That seems reasonable." "It is," Matthew agreed. "Let's proceed." Whitaker smiled, sliding the purchase agreement across the desk along with a fountain pen. "Take your time to review the document. It outlines the specifics of the property, the payment terms, and your rights as the new owners." Matthew and Amber took turns reading through the document. The terms were clear and straightforward, with no hidden clauses or surprises. After ensuring they were both satisfied, Matthew picked up the pen and signed his name in bold, confident strokes. Amber followed, her signature neat and deliberate. "Excellent," Whitaker said, collecting the signed agreement. "Now, for the deposit, do you have the bank draft prepared?" Matthew reached into his coat pocket and produced an envelope. "Yes, here it is." Whitaker inspected the draft, nodding in approval. "Everything is in order. I'll submit this to the seller's representative today, and we can schedule the final transfer of ownership for later this week." Amber clasped her hands together, her excitement barely contained. "That's wonderful news. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker." "My pleasure," Whitaker replied, standing to shake their hands. "Once the transfer is complete, I'll arrange for the keys to be delivered to you personally. If there's anything else you need in the meantime, don't hesitate to ask." Matthew stood, his handshake firm. "Thank you for your diligence, Mr. Whitaker. We'll leave the rest in your capable hands." Amber added, "And thank you for making this process so smooth. It's been a pleasure working with you." As they stepped out of the office and into the bustling streets of Newport, Amber looped her arm through Matthew's, her smile radiant. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "Our own home." Matthew glanced down at her, his expression soft. "It's the start of something new for both of us." Amber nodded, leaning her head against his shoulder as they walked. I can't wait to see how it all comes together. The couple spent the rest of the day exploring Newport, their excitement for the future growing with each passing hour. They visited local shops, sampled treats from a charming bakery, and took a leisurely walk along the beach near their soon-to-be home. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, they returned to their temporary accommodations, their hearts full. In the days that followed, Whitaker kept his promise. The final transfer of ownership was completed without a hitch, and the keys to the Hillcrest estate were delivered to Matthew and Amber personally. Standing on the threshold of their new home, the couple exchanged a glance filled with unspoken emotion. "Welcome home," Matthew said, unlocking the door and stepping aside to let Amber enter first. Amber took a deep breath, stepping inside the house that would soon be filled with their memories. "It's perfect," she whispered. Matthew followed, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. "It's ours." Their journey had only just begun, but as they stood together in their new home, they knew they had taken the first step toward a shared future full of promise and possibility. Chapter 142. The Hillcrest estate bustled with activity as Matthew and Amber moved into their new home. The house was empty, save for the sunlight streaming through its large windows and the occasional creak of the wooden floors as movers brought in the first pieces of furniture. The air was filled with the sound of footsteps, the rustling of packing materials, and Amber's voice directing the placement of their belongings. "Matthew, the dining table goes in the center here," Amber called, gesturing to the grand dining room. "Got it," Matthew replied, signaling the movers to place the heavy wooden table where Amber indicated. He watched as she carefully assessed the room, her keen eye for detail evident in the way she arranged the chairs and adjusted the placement of the chandelier. "Perfect," she said with a satisfied nod. The couple had spent the past week selecting furniture, fabrics, and decor for their new home. Amber had a knack for blending elegance with comfort, and Matthew found himself trusting her judgment completely. Together, they visited local furniture shops, artisans, and markets, gathering everything from plush sofas to hand-carved bookshelves. In the living room, Amber placed a vase of fresh flowers on a coffee table. "It's coming together nicely," she said, stepping back to admire the arrangement. Matthew stood beside her, his hands in his pockets. "You've got an eye for this," he said. "It already feels like home." Amber smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "It's ours, Matthew. I want it to be perfect." As the day wore on and the movers finished their work, Matthew excused himself to his study room he had quickly claimed as his own. It was modest compared to the rest of the house, with a sturdy desk, a large window overlooking the garden, and a bookshelf that already housed some of his favorite volumes. Sitting at the desk, Matthew found his mind wandering. The house was beautiful, and the process of making it their own had been fulfilling, but he couldn't help but think about the broader picture. His mind, always restless, began to turn over ideas. The Hillcrest estate was one of the few homes in Newport equipped with an electric lighting system. It had been a feature that immediately caught Matthew's attention during the house tours. As he thought about it, he realized that electricity was no longer a novelty in Amaranthi. It was becoming a mainstream necessity, and yet, what was being done to truly harness it for everyday life? People had lights, but what about appliances to make their lives easier? Matthew leaned back in his chair, a slow smile forming. The thought of introducing household appliances to the market intrigued him. It was a departure from the heavy industries Hesh Industries was known for, but it made sense. He had built machines capable of transforming cities. Why not build ones that could transform homes? He began scribbling notes. Electric stove, a safer, cleaner alternative to traditional wood or coal stoves. Refrigerator, a machine to keep perishable goods fresh, reducing waste and making life easier for homemakers. Electric fan, to provide comfort during the warmer months, especially in urban homes. Washing machine, to reduce the labor of cleaning clothes manually. The possibilities were endless. The introduction of such appliances could revolutionize daily life, just as his industrial machines had revolutionized factories. Matthew decided to keep his idea a secret from Amber, at least for now. He wanted it to be a surprise, something he could unveil once it was ready. He knew she would support him, but he wanted to ensure the concept was more than just an idea before involving her. He pulled out a ledger and began jotting down potential manufacturing costs, materials, and designs. He would need engineers to develop prototypes and test their feasibility. Marketing would also be crucial. These appliances needed to be seen as essential rather than extravagant. By the time Amber knocked on the door, calling him for dinner, Matthew had filled several pages with notes and sketches. "What have you been working on?" she asked, peeking into the study. "Just some ideas for the business," Matthew replied casually, closing the ledger. "How's the rest of the house coming along?" Amber smiled. "Almost done. You'll see at dinner it's starting to feel like a home." The next day, Matthew and Amber continued furnishing their home. They visited a shop specializing in kitchen equipment where Amber picked out elegant silverware and Matthew insisted on buying the sturdiest cookware available at another store. They found plush rugs and heavy curtains for the bedrooms. Amber carefully matched colors and textures while Matthew focused on practicality, testing the durability of every item. You know, Amber said as they left the shop, I think we've bought enough to fill an entire estate, not just one house. Matthew chuckled, better to have too much than too little. Stay tuned to NovelBin. The final stop was a local market where they purchased art and decorative items. Amber selected a few paintings and sculptures while Matthew lingered near a vendor selling antique maps. He purchased one to hang in his study, a reminder of the world beyond their cozy home. As the sun set, the couple returned to the Hillcrest estate. The house, now furnished and decorated, felt alive. The dining room was warm with the glow of electric light, and the smell of roasted chicken filled the air. Over dinner, Amber raised a glass of wine. To us, she said, smiling, and to the home we've built together. Matthew clinked his glass against hers. To us, he echoed. As they ate, Amber spoke excitedly about plans for the garden and the possibility of hosting a housewarming party. Matthew listened, nodding and offering suggestions. But his mind occasionally drifted to his new idea. The appliances he envisioned weren't just about convenience, they were about shaping the future. He imagined families across Amarathia enjoying the comforts of modern technology, their lives made easier and more efficient. It was a vision that filled him with both excitement and determination. As the evening wound down, Matthew sat by the fireplace with Amber, her head resting on his shoulder. The house was quiet, the chaos of moving now behind them. You seem deep in thought, Amber said softly. Matthew smiled, placing a kiss on her hair. Just thinking about the future, he replied. Amber looked up at him, her expression curious. And what do you see? Matthew's smile widened, something extraordinary. For now, he would keep his secret, but soon, the world and Amber would see the next chapter of Hesh Industries unfold. Chapter 143. 3 days after settling into the Hillcrest estate, the time came for Matthew Hesh to return to the demands of his business. The estate was quiet that morning, the sunlight streaming through the windows of the breakfast room where Matthew and Amber sat together for their final meal before his departure. Amber had prepared a light breakfast, insisting that Matthew start his day with something warm and comforting. The table was set with freshly baked bread, scrambled eggs, and a pot of steaming coffee. You'll call, won't you? Amber asked, her tone light but with a hint of concern as she buttered a slice of toast. Every evening, if I can, Matthew replied, smiling at her. He reached across the table to take her hand. It won't be long, I should only be gone for a few weeks. Amber nodded, though the thought of being alone in the large house left her feeling uneasy. I'll keep myself busy, there's still plenty to organize here. Matthew squeezed her hand gently. You'll do wonderfully, Amber, this house already feels like a home because of you. After breakfast, Matthew made his final preparations. His suitcase, packed the night before, waited by the door. His personal driver, a stoic man named Bernard, had the automobile ready outside. As Matthew slipped on his tailored coat, Amber stood by the door, her hands clasped in front of her. When he turned to her, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him in a warm embrace. Find more to read at NovelBin. You'll take care of yourself, she murmured, her voice muffled against his shoulder. I will, Matthew promised, holding her tightly, and you'll look after yourself too. Don't hesitate to send word if you need anything. Amber pulled back just enough to meet his gaze. It'll be fine, but he'll miss you. And he'll miss you, Matthew said sincerely. He leaned down, pressing a tender kiss to her lips. When they parted, Amber smiled softly. Safe travels, Matthew. He picked up his suitcase and stepped outside, where Bernard stood by the automobile. Amber followed, watching as Matthew settled into the passenger seat. Before the car pulled away, she leaned in through the open window, cupping his face in her hands to kiss him once more. Goodbye, Matthew, she said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. Goodbye, Amber, he replied, his gaze lingering on her as the car began to move. The drive to the train station was a short but reflective one. For Matthew, he gazed out of the window, the picturesque countryside of Newport giving way to the bustling activity of the station. Bernard expertly maneuvered the automobile through the morning crowd, coming to a stop near the platform entrance. Thank you, Bernard, Matthew said as he stepped out of the car. Safe journey, sir, Bernard replied with a polite nod. Matthew boarded the train, finding his reserved compartment easily. The plush interior offered both comfort and privacy, and he settled into his seat as the train whistle blew. With a lurch, the train began its journey, winding through the rolling hills and picturesque landscapes that connected Newport to Amsterdam. The 4-hour journey provided Matthew with ample time to organize his thoughts. He retrieved a leather-bound notebook from his suitcase and began outlining the next steps for Hesh Industries' newest venture, household appliances. He sketched rough designs, noted potential materials, and jotted down marketing ideas. The concept of introducing appliances to Amarathia was bold, but Matthew believed in its potential. The growing accessibility of electricity meant that homes were ready for innovation. Electric stoves, fans, and refrigerators weren't just conveniences, they were tools to redefine modern living. As the train neared Amsterdam, Matthew felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was ready to bring his vision to life. The train pulled into Amsterdam station at precisely noon. Its polished exterior gleaming in the midday sun, Matthew disembarked, suitcase in hand, and was met by a Hesh Industries employee who escorted him to a waiting car. Within minutes, he arrived at the company's headquarters. Employees greeted him with respectful nods as he walked through the lobby, heading straight to the executive boardroom where his senior team was already assembled. The room quieted as Matthew entered, his commanding presence drawing everyone's attention. "Good afternoon," he began, setting his suitcase aside. "Thank you for gathering on such short notice." The team exchanged glances, intrigued by the urgency in Matthew's tone. "I've been thinking about the future of Hesh Industries," he continued, pacing the room. "We've established ourselves as leaders in heavy industry, but it's time to expand our reach. Electricity is becoming a staple in homes across Amarathia, and I believe we have an opportunity to lead the charge in modernizing daily life." He paused, letting his words sink in. The room buzzed with quiet anticipation. "Our next venture will be household appliances," Matthew announced. "Electric stoves, refrigerators, fans, washing machines, products that will make life easier and more efficient for families." The room erupted into a mix of murmurs and nods. Margaret Klein, head of public relations, raised her hand. What are those things you mentioned, Sir Hesh?" Matthew anticipated the question. He knew that even with him mentioning the name of the appliances, people like Margaret and even his engineers won't be able to imagine it, as it is a new concept in this era. Matthew walked over to a large easel he had prepared earlier, uncovering it to reveal a series of detailed sketches. Each sheet depicted one of the appliances he envisioned, annotated with simple labels and descriptions. "This," he said, pointing to the first sketch, "is what I'm calling an electric stove. Imagine the coal or wood-burning stove you're used to, except instead of needing fuel, this uses electricity to heat its surface. The heat can be adjusted by turning a dial, giving you precise control over cooking temperatures. It's cleaner, safer, and faster than traditional stoves." The team leaned forward, intrigued but skeptical. Margaret furrowed her brow. "How does it work scientifically, sir?" Matthew nodded, ready to explain. "The electric stove uses a heating element, typically made of a material like nichrome, which generates heat when electricity flows through it. Think of it like the filament inside an electric light bulb. It glows hot and transfers heat to the cookware placed on top. The heat is regulated using a resistance-based switch that controls the current." He paused, scanning the room to gauge their understanding. Seeing some nods, he continued. "Next, we have the refrigerator," he said, gesturing to a sketch of a tall, rectangular box. "This will revolutionize how families store food. Inside, there's a cooling system that lowers the temperature, preventing food from spoiling." A young engineer raised his hand. "How would it stay cold, Mr. Hesh?" "The science behind it involves a process called vapor compression refrigeration," Matthew explained. "There's a liquid refrigerant inside, which evaporates into a gas when it absorbs heat. This gas is then compressed back into a liquid by a motorized pump, releasing the heat outside the unit. The cycle repeats, keeping the interior consistently cool. Think of it as a system that removes heat from inside the box and dumps it outside. So, families wouldn't have to rely on iceboxes anymore?" "Exactly," Matthew said with a smile. "It would save money and drastically reduce the risk of foodborne illnesses." He moved on to the next sketch. "This is an electric fan, a simple device but invaluable for comfort, especially during the warmer months. Using a motor powered by electricity, blades spin to create airflow, cooling the room." A senior engineer chimed in. "That's similar to the industrial fans we use in the factories." "Precisely," Matthew agreed, "but these will be compact, affordable, and designed for homes." The last sketch was a boxy machine with a cylindrical drum inside. Finally, the washing machine, a device that will take the physical labor out of cleaning clothes. Clothes go inside the drum, and with a combination of water, detergent, and mechanical agitation, the dirt is cleaned away. "How does the drum move?" another engineer asked. "The drum is rotated by an electric motor," Matthew explained. "The motion simulates hand washing but at a much faster and more efficient pace. Rinse cycles can be automated as well, ensuring clothes are thoroughly cleaned and dried Margaret raised her hand again. Sir, these are groundbreaking ideas, but how do we convince people to adopt them? Some might see them as extravagant or unnecessary. That's where education and marketing come in, Matthew said. We need to show people how these appliances can save them time, labor, and even money in the long run. Imagine a mother no longer spending hours over a washboard or a family not worrying about food spoiling. These aren't luxurious, they're investments in a better quality of life. He turned to the engineers. We'll need prototypes for each of these. Start with the stove and fan. Those are simpler. Once we have working models, we can begin testing. Yes, sir. Chapter 144. Matthew Hesh wasted no time in rallying his engineers to begin the work on Hesh Industries' latest venture. The energy in the factory was palpable, with teams of engineers and technicians buzzing with activity. They gathered in the workshop, a cavernous space filled with drafting tables, tools, and the hum of machinery. All right, Matthew began, addressing the group. Our priority is to create functional prototypes of the electric stove and fan. These will be the foundation of our household appliance line. They need to be efficient, reliable, and user-friendly. Let's get to work. He turned to Henry, one of the senior engineers. Henry, I want you leading the team on the electric stove. Focus on the heating element. It needs to be durable and capable of generating consistent heat without excessive energy consumption. Henry nodded. Understood, Mr. Hesh. I'll start by testing different materials for the element. Nichrome is the frontrunner, but we'll compare alternatives for cost and efficiency. Good, keep me updated on your progress, Matthew said before turning to another engineer. Martha, you'll oversee the electric fan. Start with a compact motor design. It needs to be powerful enough to generate a steady airflow but quiet and energy efficient. Martha adjusted her glasses and gave a firm nod. I'll begin prototyping the motor immediately. We'll also explore blade designs to maximize efficiency. As the teams dispersed, Matthew stayed behind, reviewing their plans and offering input where needed. He sketched modifications to the stove's dial system, suggested improvements to the fan's blade curvature, and ensured safety features were at the forefront of every design. The workdays stretched into the evenings, but Matthew's resolve never wavered. After the factory floor emptied, he would retreat to his office, where the faint glow of a desk lamp illuminated his sketches and notes. It was during these late hours that his thoughts often drifted to Amber. Each night, he made it a point to call her. The warmth in her voice always brought a smile to his face, a reprieve from the intensity of his work. How was your day? Amber asked one evening, her voice light and cheerful. Busy, Matthew admitted, leaning back in his chair. We're making progress on the prototypes. The team is working tirelessly, and I'm confident we'll have something tangible soon. Amber's laughter was a balm to his tired mind. I'm sure you will. You've always had a way of turning ideas into reality. The house feels a bit empty without you, though. Matthew chuckled. I miss you too, Amber. How's the estate coming along? I planted some roses in the garden today, she said. I think you'll love how it looks when you return. I'm sure I will, Matthew replied softly, and I'll make it back as soon as I can. Their conversations often lasted well into the night, filled with shared dreams, laughter, and the comfort of each other's voices. It was these moments that kept Matthew grounded, reminding him of the life he was building beyond the walls of his factory. The days passed in a blur of experimentation and problem-solving. The first attempts at the electric stove were promising but flawed. The heating element generated uneven heat, scorching some areas while leaving others cold. Henry and his team worked tirelessly, testing different alloys and adjusting the design. The key is uniform heat distribution, Henry explained during a team meeting. We're refining the element's shape and placement to ensure consistent performance. Meanwhile, Martha faced challenges with the electric fan. The initial motor prototype was too noisy, a far cry from the quiet, efficient device they envisioned. We'll need to fine-tune the motor and redesign the blades, Martha reported. I've got a few ideas to reduce noise and increase airflow efficiency. Matthew spent hours on the factory floor, offering suggestions and encouraging the teams. His hands-on approach inspired the engineers, who pushed themselves to meet his high standards. After weeks of relentless effort, the breakthrough finally came. Henry's team unveiled the first working prototype of the electric stove. It was a sleek, compact design with a smooth black surface and a simple dial for temperature control. We've solved the heat distribution issue, Henry announced proudly. The heating element now provides consistent heat across the entire surface. It's ready for testing. Matthew examined the stove closely, running his fingers over its polished surface. Excellent work, Henry. Let's put it through its paces. I want to see how it performs in real-world conditions. The stove was moved to the testing area where a small team of cooks prepared various dishes to evaluate its performance. The results were overwhelmingly positive. The stove heated quickly, maintained consistent temperatures, and cooked food evenly. Enjoy new chapters from Novelbin. Later that evening, Martha presented the electric fan prototype. It was compact, with a sleek metal frame and 3 curved blades. The motor hummed softly as the fan spun, generating a steady breeze. We've achieved the balance we were aiming for, Martha explained. The motor is quiet and efficient, and the blade design maximizes airflow. Matthew turned the fan on and watched as it silently filled the room with a refreshing breeze. Well done, Martha, this is exactly what I envisioned. With the prototypes complete, Matthew gathered the entire team in the boardroom. The electric stove and fans sat on a table at the front, gleaming under the lights. These prototypes represent the future of Hesh Industries, Matthew said, addressing the team. What you've accomplished here is extraordinary. These devices aren't just innovations, they're tools that will improve lives and redefine how people live. The room erupted in applause, the team beaming with pride. Now, Matthew continued, his tone serious, our work is far from over. We need to refine these designs, test them rigorously, and prepare for production. This is just the beginning. As the applause died down, Matthew felt a surge of pride and determination. The first prototypes were tangible proof of his vision, a testament to the power of innovation and teamwork. That night, as he spoke with Amber, he shared the news. We've done it, Amber. The first prototypes are ready. I knew you would, she replied, her voice filled with pride. I can't wait to see them. You will, Matthew promised. Soon, everyone will. Chapter 145. Enjoy exclusive adventures from Novelbin. The city of Sylvania was abuzz with excitement as Hesh Industries prepared to unveil its latest groundbreaking innovations. Matthew Hesh had orchestrated an elaborate public exhibition to showcase the electric stove and fan prototypes, along with other future concepts. The event, set to take place in the Grand Hall of the newly renovated Sylvania Civic Center, promised to be a spectacle that would captivate the public and industry leaders alike. Matthew left no detail overlooked. From the layout of the exhibition hall to the design of the promotional materials, everything was meticulously planned. Banners bearing the Hesh Industries logo were draped across the city's main streets, and invitations were sent to prominent businessmen, politicians, and journalists. Amber, who had joined Matthew in Sylvania to support him, contributed her keen eye for aesthetics to the project. She worked with event planners to ensure the exhibition hall exuded a sense of modernity and innovation while remaining inviting to the public. This is going to be incredible, Amber said, inspecting the final arrangements. I can feel the excitement in the air already. Matthew smiled at her enthusiasm. It's not just about showing off the technology, it's about inspiring people. Amber, I want them to see what's possible. On the morning of the exhibition, a crowd began gathering outside the Civic Center. The building itself was a testament to progress, its facade illuminated by electric lights, a fitting symbol for the event's theme. A large banner over the entrance read, Hesh Industries, innovating tomorrow, today. Matthew arrived early, dressed in a sharp suit that exuded confidence. He greeted guests personally as they entered, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. The air inside the hall buzzed with anticipation as attendees marveled at the sleek displays and polished prototypes. Amber stood by his side, her presence lending a touch of warmth to the otherwise formal affair. They're all here for you, she whispered. Squeezing his arm, they're here for what we've created, Matthew corrected with a smile. This is about the future. The hall was divided into sections, each dedicated to a specific innovation. The centerpiece was a stage where Matthew would deliver his keynote speech. Around the room, interactive displays allowed visitors to experience the technology firsthand. The electric stove, a fully functional model, was set up in a mock kitchen. Chefs demonstrated its capabilities by preparing simple yet delicious meals, highlighting the stove's efficiency and even heat distribution. The electric fan, several fans were placed around the hall, providing a gentle breeze that enhanced the atmosphere. Attendees marveled at how quietly they operated. Concept models. In addition to the completed prototypes, Matthew had included concept sketches for future appliances, including heat pumps, electric kettles, ovens, etc. that would revolutionize how families approach their daily chores. Each display featured detailed drawings, brief descriptions, and miniature models to help attendees visualize the potential of these innovations. The heat pump concept was showcased prominently with an interactive panel explaining its functionality. Beside the panel stood a small, non-operational model designed to illustrate its sleek, space-saving design. This Matthew explained to a group of investors gathered near the display is the future of climate control. The heat pump is efficient, eco-friendly, and capable of both heating and cooling homes. It utilizes the natural thermodynamic process of heat transfer. He pointed to a diagram showing the system's mechanics. Imagine a cold winter evening. Instead of burning coal or wood, this device extracts heat from the air outside even in freezing conditions and brings it inside. In the summer, it reverses the process, expelling heat from your home to keep it cool. One of the investors, a man with a sharp eye for opportunity, leaned closer. This could replace traditional fireplaces and coal furnaces entirely. That's the goal, Matthew confirmed. It's cleaner, safer, and more cost-effective in the long run, or in the early stages, but the potential is limitless. Another crowd favorite was the electric kettle, positioned next to the heat pump. The kettle's display featured a timeline comparing traditional methods of boiling water to the speed and efficiency of the electric version. Matthew demonstrated the concept using a mock control panel. This device will bring water to a boil in minutes using an electric heating element. No open flames, no waiting for the fire to catch. It's perfect for homes, cafes, and offices. But can you turn that concept into reality? A journalist from the Sylvania Gazette scribbled notes furiously. You know what they say, you don't have to release all the best cards right away, but that doesn't mean you don't have them in your deck, he replied smoothly. These concepts are built on proven principles. And while some are in the early stages, I have no doubt we can turn them into reality. Innovation is about taking what seems impossible and making it inevitable. While many of the concepts on display were forward-looking, the washing machine was gaining attention. Positioned prominently in the center of the exhibition floor, it attracted constant attention from attendees. A sign above the display read, "The future of laundry, here today." Matthew led a group of onlookers to the washing machine, which was surrounded by glass panels allowing everyone to observe it in action. Inside the drum, a demonstration load of clothing swirled gently, the water and detergent visibly agitating the fabric. This, Matthew began, gesturing to the machine, isn't just a concept, it's a reality. The mechanized laundry system is designed to save time, effort, and energy. No more washboards, no more backbreaking labor. You load your clothes, add water and detergent, set the timer, and let the machine do the rest. A woman in the crowd, clearly impressed, raised her hand. How does it work? It seems so advanced. Matthew stepped closer to the display, pointing out the key components. The drum inside is connected to an electric motor. When the machine is powered on, the motor rotates the drum in controlled cycles, simulating the motion of hand washing. Agitators inside the drum ensure that water and detergent are evenly distributed, thoroughly cleaning the clothes at the end of the cycle. A spin-dry function removes excess water, leaving the clothes ready for drying. A businessman leaned in. How do you plan to make this accessible to the average family? Surely the production costs are significant. Matthew nodded, anticipating the concern. You're right, the initial cost of manufacturing these machines is high. But as we scale production and refine the design, we'll bring down costs. The goal is to make this a staple in every home, not just a luxury item. Amber, who had joined the crowd near the washing machine, added with a smile. And think of the time it saves. Families can focus on what matters most instead of spending hours scrubbing clothes. Her comment drew murmurs of agreement, particularly from the women in the audience, many of whom looked genuinely excited by the prospect of such a device. As the day progressed, Matthew took to the stage to deliver his keynote address. The crowd gathered, filling the grand hall with an air of anticipation. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, what you've seen here today is a testament to what human ingenuity can achieve. At Hesh Industries, we don't just build machines, we build solutions. Solutions that make life simpler, safer, and more efficient. He paused, gesturing to the displays behind him. The electric stove, the fan, the washing machine, and the concepts will soon be in the homes of every Amarathian home. And it will be on the first day of the new year. Chapter 146. The grand exhibition hosted by Hesh Industries was finally coming to an end. As the last visitors trickled out of the Sylvania Civic Center, the buzz of excitement still lingered in the air. Matthew and Amber Hesh stood near the stage, watching as the staff began dismantling the displays and packing up the equipment. That was incredible, Amber said, turning to Matthew with a proud smile. You've really outdone yourself this time. Matthew chuckled, loosening his tie. It wasn't just me. Everyone played a part in making this happen, but it does feel good to see people so excited about the future. Amber glanced at the washing machine display, where a group of workers was carefully boxing up the prototype. That washing machine alone is going to change so many lives. You should be proud, Matthew. I am, he admitted. But this is just the beginning. There's so much more we can do. As the last of the staff cleared the hall, Matthew and Amber made their way outside to their waiting car. The streets of Sylvania were quiet now, the festive atmosphere of the day replaced by the calm of the night. They climbed into the automobile, the hum of the engine breaking the silence as they headed to the train station. At the station, Matthew helped Amber onto the train and into their private compartment. The space was cozy, with plush seats and a small table set with tea and biscuits. Amber sat by the window, her eyes reflecting the glow of the passing station lights. You know, she began, breaking the silence. Watching you today made me realize just how much you've accomplished. I'm so proud of you. Matthew smiled, leaning back in his seat. Thank you, Amber. But honestly, a lot of what I do is inspired by you. Find exclusive stories on NovelBin. Calm Amber raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Oh? How so? Matthew leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Think about it. All these inventions, the washing machine, the stove, the fanfare about making life easier for people. Saving time, reducing effort, and for me, that means having more time to spend with you. Amber's cheeks flushed, and she laughed softly. That's a sweet way of looking at it. It's true, Matthew said, his tone serious now. I don't want to spend my whole life buried in work. I want to enjoy life with you, Amber. Build something together. Amber's gaze softened. Are you saying you've thought about stepping away from work? Eventually, Matthew admitted. Not right away, but maybe in my mid-30s or 40s. I want to have time for us for a family. I don't want to be one of those men who works himself into the ground and misses out on life. Amber reached across the table to take his hand. That's a beautiful thought, Matthew. I love that. Matthew grinned. Speaking of family, when do you think we should start? Amber's smile turned teasing. Are you asking me when we should have kids? Why not? Matthew said, his confidence unshaken. No time like the present. Amber laughed, shaking her head. You make it sound so simple. It doesn't have to be complicated, Matthew replied. In fact, we could get started as soon as we get home. Amber's cheeks turned pink, but she didn't look away. Is that so? Well, let's see if you keep that enthusiasm once we're back. Matthew chuckled, leaning back in his seat. Challenge accepted. The train arrived in Newport late in the evening. The cool night air greeted them as they stepped onto the platform. Their bags quickly loaded into a waiting car. The quiet streets of Newport were a stark contrast to the bustling city of Sylvania, offering a peaceful end to a long day. As they approached Hillcrest Estate, the house came into view, its windows glowing warmly against the dark sky. Amber let out a small sigh of relief. It feels good to be home. Matthew smiled, reaching over to squeeze her hand. Home sweet home. When they stepped inside, the familiar scent of polished wood and fresh flowers welcomed them. Amber set her coat on a nearby chair while Matthew placed their bags near the staircase. Long day, Amber said, stretching her arms. But it was worth it. Matthew nodded. Absolutely. But now we can finally relax. Amber turned to him, her eyes glinting with mischief. So, about that challenge, Matthew raised an eyebrow, his lips curving into a grin. Are you daring me? Maybe, Amber said, her tone playful. You do talk a big game, Mr. Hesh. Matthew laughed, stepping closer. You should know by now I always deliver. Before Amber could reply, Matthew swept her off her feet, carrying her effortlessly toward the stairs. She laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. I'll hold you to that. As they reached their bedroom, Matthew gently set Amber down, her feet touching the plush carpet with a soft thud. She smoothed her dress, glancing up at him with a playful smirk. You're awfully confident tonight. Matthew leaned against the doorframe, his smile easy but his eyes filled with affection. Confidence comes naturally when I'm with you, Amber. You're my greatest inspiration. After all, Amber rolled her eyes, though her cheeks flushed with color. You always know the right thing to say. It's the truth, Matthew said, his tone softening. Everything I've done, the exhibition, the inventions, even this home, it's all for us, Amber, for the life we're building together. Amber stepped closer, her hand brushing against his. And I can't wait to see what the future holds, she said. Her voice steady but filled with emotion. Matthew cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently tracing her cheeks. Then let's start shaping that future tonight. Amber's eyes sparkled with a mix of mischief and warmth as she leaned into his touch. Don't make promises you can't keep, Matthew Hesh. Matthew grinned. You should know by now I never do. Are you ready? Ready when you are, Amber smiled, showing her neck to him seductively. Chapter 147. January 1st, 1889. The city of Amsterdam was alive with curiosity and excitement as word spread about the grand opening of Hesh Industries' newest venture, the first-ever department store in Amarathia. This project was another bold move by Matthew Hesh, showcasing not just the revolutionary appliances his company had recently unveiled, but also an entirely new way to shop. The store stood in the heart of Amsterdam, a modern marvel of architecture with a sleek, towering facade, floor to ceiling. Windows revealed glimpses of the wonders inside, from the glowing electric lights to the carefully curated displays. The name Hesh Emporium was prominently displayed above the main entrance in gleaming metal letters. Illuminated by soft electric bulbs, crowds gathered outside, filling the streets in anticipation. Matthew and Amber Hesh stood on a raised platform at the entrance, surrounded by city officials, journalists, and curious onlookers. Amber wore a stylish yet modest dress, while Matthew donned a sharp suit, exuding the same quiet confidence that had become his trademark. A long red ribbon stretched across the entrance, fluttering slightly in the breeze. The buzz of conversations filled the air, mingled with the occasional flash of a camera. Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew began, his voice amplified by a rudimentary microphone system powered by Hesh Industries' own electrical setup. Thank you for joining us today for the opening of Hesh Emporium. This is more than just a store, it's a symbol of progress, innovation, and opportunity. Our goal is to bring the future into your hands and make it accessible to everyone. Amber stepped forward, her smile warm and inviting. We've worked tirelessly to ensure this space isn't just a store but a community hub, a place where ideas meet reality and where businesses can grow. The crowd cheered as Matthew held up an oversized pair of scissors. He turned to Amber, who nodded with a smile, and together, they cut the ribbon. Applause erupted, and the doors swung open, revealing the dazzling interior. Visitors streamed in, their faces alight with wonder as they stepped into the vast, brightly lit space. The electric lights bathed the polished wooden floors in a warm glow, and the open layout made it easy to navigate between sections. Each corner of the store had been meticulously designed to showcase a different theme. In the appliance station, the electric stove, fan, and washing machine were displayed in fully functional settings. Demonstrators showed how the stove cooked meals evenly and efficiently, while another team operated the washing machine, its gentle hum drawing impressed nods from onlookers. A mother turned to her young daughter and whispered, "Imagine not having to scrub clothes by hand anymore." Another section featured sleek models of Hesh automobiles, displayed on raised platforms under spotlights. Agents from the Hesh Automobiles dealership, dressed sharply in tailored uniforms, stood ready to explain the features and functionality of the cars to the curious visitors. One visitor, a well-dressed businessman, approached a glossy black automobile. "You're telling me this carriage moves without horses?" he asked incredulously. "Yes, sir." One of the agents replied with practiced ease. "These vehicles are powered by an internal combustion engine. Simply fill the tank with gasoline, turn the crank, and the engine does the rest. No need for stables or fodder. It's been around for years, and this is your first time seeing one." "Well, I came from the West. There's nothing like it in there." On the second floor, retail stalls stood ready to be leased. Many were still vacant, but a few forward-thinking entrepreneurs had already claimed spots, displaying a variety of goods, fine fabrics, jewelry, and artisanal crafts. Each stall was outfitted with floor-to-ceiling windows, inviting passersby to stop and browse. A tailor named Mr. Langley had set up a small corner stall with mannequins displaying his finest suits and gowns. A customer admired the craftsmanship and asked, "How did you get such a prime spot?" Langley smiled proudly. Mr. Hesh offered these spaces at a fair rate. He wants this store to be more than just a showcase for his products. It's a marketplace for local businesses like mine. Nearby, a confectioner handed out samples of chocolates to delighted children and their parents. "This place will do wonders for us," she whispered to a colleague. "We'll reach more people than ever before." Matthew and Amber walked through the second floor, observing the activity. Amber leaned in close to Matthew and said, "This is exactly what you envision, a place where people can come together." Matthew nodded, his gaze sweeping over the bustling crowd. "This isn't just about technology. It's about creating a space where ideas flourish and people thrive." Back on the main floor, interactive demonstrations continued to captivate visitors. A young couple watched intently as a demonstrator used the electric stove to prepare a simple meal. "It's so fast." The woman marveled as the food sizzled evenly on the stove. The demonstrator nodded. "And safe, too. No open flames. No cold dust, just clean, efficient cooking." In the corner, a journalist interviewed a group of attendees about their impressions of the Emporium. "What do you think of this new store?" she asked an older gentleman. He adjusted his spectacles and replied, "It's unlike anything I've ever seen. This isn't just a store, it's the future." As the evening approached, Matthew gathered a few key employees for a final walkthrough. The crowds had thinned, but the energy of the day still buzzed in the air. Amber joined him. Her arm looped through his. "You've outdone yourself, Matthew," she said, her voice warm with pride. "I couldn't have done it without you," Matthew replied. "Your ideas shaped so much of what you see here." Experience exclusive tales on Novelbin. Calm Amber gave him a playful nudge. "Don't try to flatter me, Mr. Hesh. This was your dream, and you made it real." As they stood near the store's entrance, watching the last visitors leave, a young boy tugged at Matthew's sleeve. "Mister, thank you for building this place," the boy said shyly. "It's amazing." Matthew crouched down to the boy's level, a kind smile on his face. "Thank you for coming. I hope you'll visit often." The boy nodded eagerly before running off to join his family. The streets of Amsterdam were quiet as Matthew and Amber made their way to the train station. The car ride was peaceful, the hum of the engine a soothing backdrop to their conversation. "I'm so proud of what you've accomplished, Matthew," Amber said, her hand resting on his. "Thank you," he replied. "But this is just the start. There's so much more I want to do." "Things like?" Amber asked, wondering what wonders he would bring in this world. Matthew thought for a moment. It has always been technology he had been introducing to the world. He wanted something different, and an idea came to mind. Chicken. Chapter 148. The train hummed softly as it carried Matthew and Amber Hesh back to Newport after the successful grand opening of the Hesh Emporium. The city lights of Amsterdam faded into the distance, replaced by the quiet countryside. Amber rested her head on Matthew's shoulder. Her eyes closed, but her mind still buzzing with the energy of the day. Matthew, however, was deep in thought. His earlier comment about chicken wasn't just a fleeting idea. It was something that had planted itself firmly in his mind. He looked out at the darkened landscape, his thoughts racing. "Amber," he said softly, not wanting to disturb her too suddenly. She murmured, lifting her head slightly. "Have you ever thought about how long it takes for people to get a meal when they go to a restaurant?" Matthew asked, his tone thoughtful. Amber tilted her head, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "Well, think about it," Matthew began, leaning forward slightly. "When people go to a restaurant, they have to wait for a menu, decide what they want, place their order, and then wait again for the food to be prepared. It can take a long time, especially if the place is busy." Amber nodded, understanding his point. "That's true, but isn't that part of the experience? Sitting down, enjoying the atmosphere." "Yes, but not everyone has the time for that," Matthew countered. "What about people who are on their lunch break, or families who just want a quick, affordable meal? What if there was a way to serve good food faster?" Amber's eyes lit up as she began to grasp his idea. "You're talking about revolutionizing how people eat out, aren't you?" Matthew nodded. "Exactly. Imagine a place where you can walk in, place an order at a counter, and get your food within minutes. No long waits, no complicated process, just fast, consistent, and affordable meals." Amber leaned back, considering his words. "That's an interesting idea, but how would you make it work?" "Restaurants take time to prepare meals because they're made fresh. Read exclusive adventures at Novelbin. calm, that's where the innovation comes in, Matthew explained. We'd focus on a limited menu, simple, popular dishes that can be prepared quickly and consistently. Everything would be prepped in advance. So it's just a matter of assembly. For example, fried chicken could be breaded and cooked in batches, kept warm until it's served. Amber's brow furrowed slightly. Wouldn't people think it's lower quality if it's made that way? Not if it's done right, Matthew said confidently. The key would be to maintain high standards for quality while streamlining the process and would make the experience enjoyable. Lean, welcoming spaces, friendly staff, and affordable prices. Amber smiled, her imagination running wild. It does sound like something people would love, families especially, but what would you call it? Matthew thought for a moment, a grin spreading across his face. Fast food, that's what it is. Good food, served fast. As the train continued its journey, Matthew shared more of his vision. He described a world where fast food restaurants would be everywhere, conveniently located in busy city centers, along highways, and even in small towns. Imagine this, Matthew said, his eyes lighting up. A family on a road trip stops at one of these places. They can order fried chicken, sandwiches, maybe even burgers, and be back on the road in less than 20 minutes, or workers on their lunch break grab a quick meal without worrying about being late getting back. Amber nodded, clearly impressed. It sounds like it could change the way people think about eating out, but wouldn't it be expensive to set up these restaurants? It would require an initial investment, yes, Matthew admitted, but the returns could be enormous. Once the system is in place, it's efficient. A smaller menu means less waste, and faster service means more customers can be served in a day. Amber leaned closer, her curiosity piqued. And what about the people working there? How would you make sure they're not overwhelmed? We'd design the kitchen layout to maximize efficiency, Matthew explained. Each worker would have a specific task, one person frying chicken, another assembling sandwiches, and so on. Training would be simple, so anyone could learn the job quickly. Amber smiled, clearly impressed. You've really thought this through. I have, Matthew admitted. It's an idea that's been in the back of my mind for a while, but I think now is the right time to make it happen. With electricity becoming more widespread, we could even introduce electric fryers and grills to make the process faster and safer. By the time the train pulled into Newport, Amber was fully on board with the idea. As they rode in the car toward Hillcrest Estate, the conversation continued, each of them building on the other's ideas. Amber suggested incorporating a play area for children, making it a place where families could relax together. Matthew considered offering meal deals to make it even more appealing to budget-conscious customers. You know, Matthew, Amber said as they approached the house, this could be one of your greatest contributions yet. It's not just about technology, it's about connecting with people's everyday lives. Matthew smiled, taking her hand. That's the goal, Amber, to make life better, one step at a time. As they stepped into the warmth of Hillcrest Estate, Matthew's mind was already racing with plans. He envisioned the first fast food restaurant opening in Amsterdam, a simple yet inviting space that would set the standard for a new era in dining. That night, as Amber rested after their long day, Matthew stayed up in his study, sketching designs for the restaurant and outlining the steps needed to bring his vision to life. He thought about the name, the branding, and the menu, jotting down ideas for dishes like fried chicken, burgers, and milkshakes. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Convincing people to embrace such a new concept would take effort, and there would be challenges in sourcing ingredients, training staff, and managing operations. But if there was one thing Matthew had learned, it was that innovation required risk. As the clock struck midnight, Matthew leaned back in his chair, looking at the sketches spread across his desk. The idea was ambitious, but he was confident that it could work. After all, the greatest ideas often started with a simple thought and a willingness to make it real. Chapter 149. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Hillcrest Estate, casting a warm glow over the dining room. Amber Hesh was seated at the head of the table, reading a novel while sipping her morning tea. She looked up as the sound of footsteps approached, smiling as Matthew entered, carrying a box filled with various ingredients. Good morning, Amber, Matthew greeted, setting the box on the kitchen counter with an air of excitement. Good morning, Amber replied, intrigued by the assortment of items. What's all this? An experiment? Matthew said with a grin, rolling up his sleeves. I've been thinking about the menu for the fast food restaurant, and I want to try making a few dishes myself. Amber raised an eyebrow, a playful smile tugging at her lips. You? Cooking? This I have to see. Don't underestimate me, Matthew teased, pulling out a small notebook where he had jotted down recipes. I'm not a chef, But I know what I'm doing, trust me. Amber laughed, closing her book and setting it aside. All right, Mr. Hesh, show me what you've got. Matthew transformed their spacious kitchen into a makeshift fast food testing lab. He laid out the ingredients on the counter. Fresh chicken, ground beef, potatoes, flour, oil, and an assortment of spices. I'm going to make 3 things, he explained, tying an apron around his waist. Fried chicken, burgers, and fries simple. But if we get these right, we'll have a solid foundation for the menu. Amber watched curiously as Matthew began prepping. He marinated the chicken in a mixture of buttermilk and spices, explaining the process as he worked. The buttermilk tenderizes the chicken, and the spices give it flavor. This will make the coating stick better when we fry it. Next, he peeled and sliced the potatoes into thin strips, soaking them in water. This removes excess starch and helps the fries get crispier when fried, he said, glancing at Amber, who nodded with interest finally. He formed the ground beef into patties, seasoning them lightly with salt and pepper. The key to a good burger is simplicity, Matthew noted. Too many ingredients can overpower the flavor of the meat. Matthew heated a pot of oil on the stove for frying, keeping an eye on the temperature. Once it was ready, he coated the chicken in a seasoned flour mixture and carefully lowered the pieces into the hot oil. The kitchen filled with the mouth-watering aroma of frying chicken. Amber leaned against the counter, inhaling deeply. That smells amazing. Wait until you taste it, Matthew said confidently, while the chicken cooked. He moved on to the fries, after draining the soaked potato strips. He fried them in batches, removing them when they turned a golden brown. A sprinkle of salt finished them off. The burgers came last. Matthew heated a cast-iron skillet, placing the patties on the hot surface. They sizzled and released a savory aroma, filling the kitchen with warmth. He toasted the buns lightly, then assembled the burgers with cheese, lettuce, and a dollop of mayonnaise. Matthew set the table with the 3 dishes. A platter of crispy fried chicken, a basket of golden fries, and 2 freshly made burgers. He gestured for Amber to sit, taking a seat across from her. All right, Matthew said, watching her expectantly. The moment of truth. Amber picked up a piece of fried chicken. Taking a bite, the crunch of the crispy coating gave way to juicy, flavorful meat. She closed her eyes briefly, savoring the taste. This is incredible, she said, her eyes wide. The seasoning is perfect, and the chicken is so tender. Matthew grinned, clearly pleased. I told you. Next, Amber tried the fries. She popped one into her mouth, smiling as the crisp exterior gave way to a soft, fluffy interior. These are better than anything I've ever had at a restaurant, she declared finally. She took a bite of the burger. The combination of the juicy patty, melted cheese, and fresh toppings elicited a satisfied sigh. Matthew, she said, setting the burger down. This is genius. If this is what you're planning to serve at the restaurant, people are going to love it. Matthew leaned back, his expression one of quiet triumph. That's the idea. I wanted to make food that's simple, delicious, and fast. Something people will come back for again and again. As they continued eating, Amber looked at Matthew thoughtfully. You know, this really could change how people think about food. It's not just the taste, it's the convenience. If you can make this as quick and affordable as you've been talking about, it'll be a game changer. That's the goal, Matthew said. And it's not just about the food. It's about the experience. Clean, welcoming spaces, friendly service, and consistency. People should know exactly what they're getting every time they walk in. Amber smiled, wiping her hands with a napkin. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Not everything, Matthew admitted. But I've got the foundation. Now it's about building on it. After they finished eating, Matthew cleared the table, placing the empty plates in the sink. Amber leaned against the counter, watching him with a mix of admiration and curiosity. Stay tuned with Novelbin. Calm. What's next? She asked. Matthew turned to her, his expression determined. Next, I start looking for the right location. A small space in Amsterdam, somewhere with high foot traffic. Then I'll work on hiring staff and setting up the kitchen. Amber nodded. And the menu? Will it just be these 3 items? For now, Matthew said. I want to keep it simple: fried chicken, burgers, fries, and maybe milkshakes. Once the restaurant is running smoothly, We can think about expanding the menu. How about the suppliers? Amber's question hung in the air, and Matthew leaned against the counter, folding his arms. That, he said after a moment, is going to be one of the biggest hurdles. Amber tilted her head, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. What do you mean? Isn't it just a matter of finding local farms and suppliers? Matthew sighed, shaking his head. I don't think the current supply won't be able to keep up with the demand because this idea is novel. Looks like I have to work on something else first before launching it. Chapter 150. Matthew Hesh sat in his study late into the evening, surrounded by papers and sketches. Amber's question about suppliers had been a simple one, but it had opened a floodgate of thoughts about the challenges ahead. The fast food concept he envisioned was ambitious, but he couldn't ignore the practical obstacles that stood in its way. Chief among them was the current state of food production and the cultural norms of the 1880s. Matthew leaned back in his chair, pen in hand, reflecting on the social habits of the time in Amarathia. As in much of the world during the late 19th century, family meals were a cherished tradition. Families gathered around the table to share meals prepared at home. With recipes passed down through generations, eating out was a rarity, reserved for special occasions or the wealthy elite who could afford fine dining establishments. Fast food, as he envisioned, eat a quick, affordable meal served in a casual setting, was a concept that clashed with this norm. People weren't accustomed to eating on the go or choosing convenience over tradition. If his vision was to succeed, Matthew realized he would have to do more than introduce new technology. He would have to reshape how people thought about food and dining. The cultural hurdle was just one piece of the puzzle. The other, perhaps more daunting, was the supply chain. In the 1880s, food production was localized, small-scale, and labor-intensive. Farms produced enough to supply local markets, but the idea of mass-producing chicken, potatoes, and beef on an industrial scale was virtually unheard of. Chickens were primarily raised in small backyard flocks for eggs and occasional meat. The concept of broiler chickens, bred specifically for meat production, didn't exist yet, while potatoes were widely cultivated. Their production was geared toward general consumption. Not specific culinary uses like frying. Storage and transportation also posed challenges as there were no large-scale facilities for keeping produce fresh. Cattle were raised for milk, draft power, or as a long-term source of meat. The idea of consistently producing ground beef in large quantities for burgers was far from practical in the current agricultural landscape. Without modern refrigeration, transporting perishable goods over long distances was nearly impossible. This limited the ability to centralize production and distribute food to multiple locations, but of course, he already invented refrigeration in this world, so this is a minus. Now, how would you modernize agriculture? Step 1. Modernizing agriculture. Matthew knew that increasing food production would require modern farming techniques. He made a list of innovations he could introduce. Selective breeding for chickens. He would work with farmers to breed birds that grew faster and had more meat. These would become the first broiler chickens optimized for consumption, high-yield potato varieties. He would collaborate with potato farmers to cultivate strains that were ideal for frying, starchy, long, and uniform in shape. Cattle feedlots. To ensure a steady supply of beef, he would introduce feedlot systems where cattle could be fattened quickly using specialized diets, crop rotation, and fertilizers to maximize land productivity. Matthew would promote crop rotation and the use of natural fertilizers like manure and compost. Step 2. Industrializing food processing. Once the raw materials were available, Matthew would need to process them efficiently. Chicken processing plants. These facilities would handle the slaughtering, cleaning, and portioning of chickens. Workers would be trained to follow standardized procedures to ensure consistency. Potato processing facilities. Potatoes would be peeled, sliced, and partially fried before being frozen or stored. This would reduce preparation time in the restaurants. Meat grinding and patty formation. Specialized equipment would grind beef and form it into uniform patties, ready to be cooked. Matthew made a note to design machinery for these tasks, combining his engineering expertise with the needs of the food industry. Step 3. Cold storage and transportation. Refrigeration would be crucial to keeping food fresh during transport. Matthew outlined the following steps. Cold storage facilities. Large warehouses equipped with ice-cooled rooms to store perishable goods. Refrigerated rail cars. Inspired by existing technology, Matthew would commission rail cars insulated with ice compartments, ensuring food could be transported over long distances without spoiling. Ice production. To supply the cold storage and rail cars, he would establish ice plants near major production hubs. Step 4. Creating demand. Matthew knew that even with an efficient supply chain, he needed to create demand for his fast food concept. This meant changing people's perception of dining out. He jotted down a few ideas. Affordability. Fast food would be priced low enough to attract working-class families and individuals who couldn't afford fine dining. Convenience. The restaurants would be located in high-traffic areas like city centers, railway stations, and marketplaces, making them easy to access. Advertising. Matthew would launch an aggressive marketing campaign to promote the idea of quick, delicious meals. Slogans like "Good food, fast" would highlight the convenience factor. Family appeal. By creating clean, welcoming spaces with play areas for children, he could position fast food as a family-friendly option. The next morning, Matthew shared his ideas with Amber over breakfast. She listened intently, her eyes widening. As he detailed each step of his plan, experience more content on Novelbin. It's brilliant, she said, setting down her tea, but it sounds like an enormous undertaking. Are you sure you're ready for this? Matthew nodded. I am. It won't be easy, but I believe it's possible. This isn't just about building a restaurant chain, it's about creating an entirely new industry. Amber reached across the table, placing her hand over his. You've always dreamed big, Matthew, and somehow you always make those dreams a reality. I believe in you. Her words filled Matthew with renewed determination. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to take the first step. Together, they would lay the foundation for a fast food empire, one that would transform the way Amarathians ate, worked, and lived. I am going to need your help in this, Matthew said. Just tell me what I need to do and I will provide it for you, Amber replied assuringly.